Yeah, hey everyone. So as we talked about yesterday, we kind of like essentially covered the topic of what is a jar file, why is it used, and why can this be beneficial to something that I'm trying to implement within Java. So with that said, your next question may be, how can I use this within Boomi? Or how can I decompile a jar file? So that will kind of cover what we'll be talking about today. So essentially, we'll talk about the best way to get a jar file on your runtime environment, whether it be a third party or something you needed online to have your code or your connector work as expected. And then we'll talk about how to potentially decompile a jar file. So you might have a use case where you need to look under what condition an error message is thrown. Maybe you need to modify something in the jar file, like a timeout value, or you want to increase logging, something along those lines to see what's going on at that point in time. So, with that said, the best way to add a jar file to your environment is through a custom library. So essentially think of a use case where there's an integration that might require some sort of third-party library, driver, code for your integration to execute successfully. So what a custom library is going to do is it's going to allow you to manage these files from the UI rather than placing them directly in your runtime environment where A, that's problematic if something's done incorrectly, or two, you might not have access to your environment if it's public, you're using a cloud environment where you're just a tenant, or something along those lines. So you don't need machine access. So with that said, we did use our java 1.0.jar file. So we're going to use that for our example today as well. So first item with that is I'm going to go to account information, account library. So this is where you upload your jar file. So I'm just going to upload my java 1.0.jar file. Great. So it's uploaded. And then from there, we can now create a custom library. So I'm going to go to new, find custom library, just call it jar java. That's fine. And then with that said, we're going to add the jar file that was included. So there's 3 different custom library types. You can read more about them in our help documentation, but essentially at a high level, general means multifunction jar file. So like the difference from that between scripting, obviously if you want to use it in a script in a data process shape, something along those lines, or connector where you can pick the specific connector that you want it to be used for. Then there's essentially different results depending on what custom library type you select. So for example, general does require a restart if it's not a forked environment, the other two do not. So let's just say, for example, it's for a script. That's fine. I'm going to save it, close it, and then I'm just going to deploy it to my environment. So what I'm going to do is create a new packaged component. I called it Java. There it is, jar Java. So let's create a package with it, and then let's deploy it. So I'll just deploy it to, let's do Gateway and Charles because that's what we've been doing. Um, Great. So it's fully deployed. So now if I go to my testing, so my Gateway and Charles environment, the way, just as an FYI, you can view any jar files is right from the Install Libraries tab under Atom Management. So just wait for this to load. And there's also 2 ways you can look, flat or folder, so you can see what's under each folder. So userlib script is where it goes by default if you select scripting. So if I go into there, there's my Java 1.0 jar. It's proper status because we did it through the custom library, the date that we deployed it, and items of that sort. But if you do want to check what's prepackaged with your runtime environment, you feel free to look here, or the folder structure, whatever is better for you. Second item we did want to cover is decompiling. So there's command line, Java jar based command line tools you can use, but just because this is a public jar file, nothing from a security standpoint that can necessarily happen because this is just online, anyone can decompile it. So I'm just using javadecomplers.com. You choose your file, so you choose your Java jar file, upload and decompile. You can see the different classes. I believe they'll just be Java files, they'll call them. We'll see what it does. but now you can see the actual Java contents. And if you click on them, obviously you can download it as well. But if you click, let's say STM8010 helper, you can see the actual classes, the code, and let's say you did need to modify something, you can essentially decompile everything and recompile the jar file. So as I talked about, a timeout value, maybe debug logging, maybe there's a bad error message thrown, so you might need to trace the code at that point in time, and items of that sort. So that kind of ends this topic, and we'll continue our Java-based lessons after this. All right, sounds good, guys. Bye.